betrayed people's trust. Faith. Made so many mistakes. Bad moves. And lost so much. But you're more than just that. Are you? You are! It's not the way you see it. Allow me to explain. Part 2. So we meet again. It was at 5 a.m. when the Travers household started to wake up. Theodore had to wake up for work, and Elvira woke up because Theodore and Simon were both very early birds, and they didn't really know how or why to keep quiet. Also, Theodore was not the best one in the kitchen yet, so Evie took that role for herself, even when she was still half asleep. And so began the 1st of December. After Theodore had eaten Elvira's porridge and taken some loaves of bread with some meat on them, he left the house for work. The snowy weather had ended, and now when Theodore opened his house's door, he was greeted with a chilling wind in the morning's darkness. The sun was still rising, and in the distance its shines almost could have been spotted against the clouds in the sky. Another day for work, and another morning winter during the darker months were a lot more likable for the young traveler. He thought that the day needed certain rules. Mornings and evenings were darker. The day was bright. Mornings and evenings were darker, and the day was bright. It was one of the main reasons why Theodore considered himself as a winter person. After Theodore got finally back to the workshop, he was greeted with his elderly friend, Gustav Prequel, a calm gentleman who was the village's school's teacher, which unfortunately ended its activity due to emigration from the countryside to cities. "Welcome back, my young friend," he shouted to Theodore from the entrance. "Good morning to you as well," Theodore shouted back. "Mr. Dark is still on his way, but I also have the keys to this door, so this time I shall open the door for you. But since we are here, what would you like to plan for today's lesson?" Gustav asked from his student. "What if you tell me more about history today? I've already played enough with numbers the last few weeks," Theodore replied. Gustav answered with his usual friendly and fatherly tone. "But of course, you've been doing very well with problem solving in the storage. Let's get in." After having said that, Gustav opened the workshop's door and entered his office. Theodore took a piece of paper on Gustav's desk and read it. "This is not usual for Roderick to be late. The clock is already 5:30. He usually is always right on time. Were you my boy with him the last evening? It is truly a rarity of him being late," Gustav said out loud while preparing his typewriter. Theodore replied back, "Yes, I believe everything should be completely in order. Well, he arrives when he arrives." Gustav nodded in agreement and started to write a final report of November. Theodore walked up to the workshop side with his task list. The workshop was still completely empty, so Theodore had practically full freedom over the place. But during the time of Christmas, the hours started to get very stressful and packed with projects. This was something that the older and more experienced workers had already gotten used to and have learned how to prepare their days before the busy times. Theodore wasn't yet the most skilled at time management or making big plans for month-long periods, and he needed someone's help to make his plans realistic and precise as possible. Still, Theodore followed his task list's orders and walked up to the storage, grabbed one long 2 to 4 and started to make some marks on it with a pencil. Just when Theodore had drawn the first line, Roderick appeared on the entrance. Only a few minutes late. Nothing to be worried of. How you two been doing? Nothing too important yet. All right. No one else is here at this time of the day, like usual. If you need help, just ask. Since now I also have time to help. And so, the back and forth ended, and Roderick went to the change room. And Roderick went to change his clothes that were more suitable for carpentry. Gustav was the workshop's office manager and an accountant. Also, he liked to keep his own style with his work, so he was the only one with a suit or something else more celebrative clothing out of all the workers in the workshop. Even Roderick might have had some days of his own suit, but they were exceptional. Hurries and emissions were part of the daily routine, especially during the mornings, because most of the workers arrived at 7:13 a.m., while Gustav and Roderick came at the workshop at 5:30 a.m. Theodore followed the latter, because he really didn't have anything else to do during the mornings, other than just to wait the hour when the work would start. Also, he admired Gustav and Roderick's way of time management, so that was also a factor. Because of the hurries of Christmas, many different projects had to be managed at once in order to get them all ready in time. Theodore's number one project of today were skis for traveling and hiking. They had to be long, thin, and well designed, but still tough and unbreakable. Theodore already had the planks ready for the skis, and then he had to turn and plane down on the edges to make the design more elegant. After that was ready, it was the turning's turn, and the clock was already closing at 8 a.m., and the first set of carpenters have already arrived. A phenomenon that had cursed the village where the workshop was held was that its middle age started to rise fast after the urbanization had reached the more remote areas as well. Also, because of the new taxation system of the country, it was not profitable to have a small farm and trying to make your living out of it, even a fraction of it. Because of all this, almost 3/4 of the village's youth were moving to cities and towns that were started to grow around the village. And so the countryside's only people would be men and women who were already over 30 years old and had a reasonably sized farm so they can feed themselves and also sell some of their products. But you couldn't spot this rise in middle age any better than in the Dark's workshop, because most of the workers were either former pensioners from some other jobs or they were already significantly weakened by their age, that the farmland's work was too much for them, so they had to find some other way to still support their family. For one other 30-year-old was 7 pensioner aged, approximately 55 / 70 years old men. Theodore was the youngest, 15 years old, and the second youngest worker was 22, then 24, and then 27. And then there was only two brothers, whose age was between 13 and 40. And the rest were already starting to become nearly 60 years old. Despite the aging workers, the atmosphere was high up and very positive. The workshop was built with voluntary power and it was sustained with one as well. So all the carpenters knew each other and had an emotional connection to their jobs. Also, many of them were happy to see familiar faces and people they already had formed a good connection to. After Theodore had the skis planks turned and planed, they were awaiting their next step, twisting their heads. After the process was started, the planks' heads were forced to bend upwards. Suddenly, the lunch bell started to ring, and the lunch break could begin. While the 29 carpenters moved on to the dining hall, Gustav walked on the hall's doors with a piece of paper and stated the following. Gentlemen, I'll explain more during the lunch, but I say now that we have no reason to hurry this time, and probably from now on. Gustav tried to sound calm, but his voice was exceptionally low for him, and he certainly was not at his happiest moments. Despite his very unclear statement, everyone nodded back to him and entered the dining hall. In the dining hall was very questionable tension because of that statement given by Gustav. Despite it, a lot of the things were still normal. Roderick walked up towards Theodore during the lunch break and sat next to him as usual. But this time, Roderick had a serious look on his face, and he wanted to talk about something more serious subject this time. I'd like to talk a little bit about your visit yesterday, and a bit more personal matters. But wait until Gustav gets to say what he has to tell us. Roderick whispered to Theodore's ear, while Gustav was preparing for an unfortunate reveal from this year's reports for the workers. And for the workshop in general. Gustav started to speak, but his voice cracked from time to time, and he looked very pale for having to tell his friends about the situation. Since your great efforts have paid off for our company, we are still working under the same roof as always, and we've been able to top each year with more challenges and obstacles. I'm afraid the next obstacle is something we cannot best with just this fine group. As you are aware of, our situation, the population of our beautiful village has gotten smaller year by year, and so has the amount of customers. Also, the farmlands have started to move on to the biggest landowners, which decreases the potential amount of new customers and drives annually tens of families away from here. There is no longer only one solution. And for it we need all of your help we can just get. We will expand our service to the markets outside of this village. Specifically, the two nearest towns, Upward and not named yet. This means that more work is required from you, but also it means more possible revenue for us and new possible workers to sustain our fine workshop. This Christmas will be way calmer than ones we've had in previous years. But for the sake of our product getting more universal respect and recognition, we need you to put your finest art of hands for them. So I will ask from you, my friends, are you with us? After Gustav had finished that sentence, the dining hall was conquered by complete silence. It was all pure shock for the unfortunate news, which everyone knew were coming, but they were just not ready for such a big change in action. More specifically, taking the risk to try and gaining control over the markets of the outside world, which had no knowledge of the village even existing. It was until an unexpected voice started to rise, and breaking the silence, the oldest worker of them all, Eric Pinehill, rised up and decided to give his opinion on the choice given to them. What else we've been doing other than taking risks? Building up a workshop with voluntary force in the middle of nowhere? Then we've been carpenters for how long? Sure, we have capable hands for more spreaders. Yes. And if it requires better quality in our work, why wouldn't we at least see how it will end up? Added his friend Paul Sandland. What they said, stated the rest of the group, and Gustav replied back. Good. I knew we could count on your capable hands and minds. Now, when the dining hall was filled by a pleased mood of doing. For a long time, the workshop had a project and plan where everyone would play their role. And once again, it was something that was unclear. It fascinated all the men, because for now, in a longer time than expected, they would have to take actual risks and make choices. Everyone else was chatting and throwing their own ideas around the table. Roderick leaned towards Theodore again and started to whisper to his ear. I want to thank you for making my daughter speak again. We almost had a bit too good morning together that I didn't even make here in my usual time. But to a more serious matters, come to my office after this lunch. It is about your future this time, what I have to tell you. Theodore nodded and shifted his focus back on the lunch. This time it was salmon soup, salty and mixed with potatoes, sweets and carrots. The mix was great and expertly made thanks to the hired cooks. The old man ate their soup fast and rushed back to work, like it was their last possible day. Roderick and Gustav also went to their own offices, and Theodore left the dining hall last. He first tried the skis' heads, if they were already bended enough. Not this time, so they were still left on the place, and Theodore headed towards Roderick's office, where Mr. Dark was already expecting his apprentice, with a piece of paper that looked like a deal that had to be signed. What might this mean? I think in the middle of already big change, this may not be the best time to tell you this, but you have already helped us so much that I can't hold myself anymore. Theodore, I wish you to be the next owner of this workshop. You are the finest man I can find just from here. I will not be here forever, And it's not like I don't trust anyone else. You are the one I can trust the most. I'll ask from you. This is my testament which says that this workshop and its machinery will belong to you after my death. Also, I have promised you 25,000 marks for the bottom cash while this building is transported to you. Will you, Theodore Gabriel Trevor, sign it? This came to me a bit too quick. Why you won't find anyone more experience with running a business and handling risks? I need to think about this more. Theodore started to stutter while still trying to keep his cool. There isn't any reason to hurry with this deal. I'm not leaving this world tomorrow. To answer your question, I can find a wealthy and ambitious businessman who has never probably had a hammer in his own hand, and just hope it would be it. I'm not like that. I want to have an assurance that the next owner has an emotional connection to this place. Roderick explained while pointing the photographs on his office's wall, which show the most important days for the workshop's development. When its foundings were started to get digged, the building phase started and ended, and the workshop could bring in jobs. What is in common with all these pictures? You are there in all of them. I want a capable head for this company, and I am sure you can become one. After all, you're still just 15. Your prime years are about to begin. You have also proved yourself that you're a fast learner. Roderick tried to reason with his choice of Theodore being his follower. Guess you, Mr. Dark, are right. If you just help me while I am starting my career in your place, I'll happily accept your testament. Theodore gathered his thoughts and said back, Good. Just wait until we have some sort of witnesses. You may leave now. Roderick said back while looking and sounding very excited about the turn of events. Theodore headed back to the workshop side of building. Since the skis were still bent enough, Theodore thought to take a look at his task list again in order to find any new projects for him to start while still waiting.